We are interviewing Robert Craig Kauffman, a major artist who has been important in the evolution and history of Los Angeles as a major art center. Craig, you were born in this area, born in Los Angeles?
Eagle Rock.
In Eagle Rock,
which is
right?
between, I used to say, well, they say, where is Eagle Rock? You know,
No.
I'd say it's between Glendale and Pasadena.
That's right.
Trendy neighborhood.
And then,
It's changed a lot, yeah. When I was a kid, there was a streetcar.
yeah,
Ran right up
Red
the
Line
main,
or something, yeah.
you know, Eagle Rock Boulevard, and then ran up Colorado up a ways.
Into Pasadena there.
No, it didn't go that far. It stopped up at a street called Yosemite. It's up about where Trader Joe's is now. Or something.
Okay,
Yeah,
down
stopped
on
up there.
Fair Oaks, yeah, right, exactly. And what do your parents do?
My father was a judge,
Uh-huh.
and my mother was a housewife, although during one of the governor elections, she was, I think she was Los Angeles chairman of,
Committee?
yeah, and so she did that to elect Governor Olson.
All right, okay.
And because he was successful, my father went from being a municipal court judge to a superior court judge, although he asked the governor for an appointment, and the governor said, well, you realize this vacancy is due for re-election very shortly, and you'll have to, somebody will probably run against you. And sure enough, a woman named Ida Mae Adams ran against my father, and she put up a giant billboard down at the end of our street. That drove us all nuts. But my father won, so he became a superior court judge.
Great. What, and were they also from California, or did they come here from?
No, my father was from Pennsylvania.
Okay, yeah.
And he'd gone to school at Dickinson Law School, and all the family lived back there, either in Harrisburg or in Mifflintown was the town. And they had really big farms, huge family, and I haven't kept up with them. They even have a book and all that stuff, you know.
And what, do you have brothers and sisters?
I had two sisters, they're both deceased now.
But two sisters close to your own age, or were they?
No, they were both older.
Older, okay, fine. And you were born Robert Craig Kauffman.
Yeah.
Why do you call yourself Craig?
Because there were so many Bobs in grammar school and high school that we just gave up on the Bob.
On the Bob. And you went to grammar school in Eagle Rock. One of the things of your history that is interesting, of course, is that early on you met a man named Walter Hobbs.
Yeah.
Was that in grade school or junior high, high school?
Kindergarten. First day of kindergarten.
Oh, you're kidding.
Is that right?
You shared a blankie?
He cried. I remember he cried. And then Walter and I knew each other off and on.
Right.
He, in high school, I think the first few years of high school, he went to private school for a while, and then he came back to Eagle Rock High.
Well, I know he went to, he was supposed to be groomed to be in medicine, I know, as a matter of fact, but he does talk about his high school days with you. He said you were quite a good gymnast, as a matter of fact.
Well, he was a gymnast too. He was on the side horse. And I was a tumbler in parallel bars.
Right.
And sometimes they made me do other things that I didn't want to do, like the rope climb.
That's not fun for anybody that rope
like
climbing.
that.
Did you go to public school with her?
Yeah, I went to, I can't remember the name, over near Glendale Grammar School, and then I had some trouble. In the third grade, I don't know, I had trouble with the teacher. And she used to take me in the cloakroom and bang my hands with a ruler a couple of times, and it really hurt. That really hurts. Have you had your hands banged with a ruler?
No. You got my rear
So
end
my
back
mother
with a ruler, but not
interceded.
my hand. That's right.
My mother interceded. She was pretty good about it. My mother interceded, and I transferred to down the grammar school near the high school.
No.
And that was much better. I was off and running then, because there was I got to do some art projects, and
Well,
I started really drawing by that time.
Let's ask that basic question. When did that, it sounds like that came into your life pretty early.
Well, in kindergarten, I was not good at painting. I made sort of muddy stuff,
Uh-huh.
and the lady got on me all the time, and the teacher got all the time confusing orange and yellow. And
Yeah.
hopefully I don't do that anymore.
Well, you use a lot of orange and yellow, as a matter of fact, with that.
But then I started drawing airplanes.
Uh-huh.
You know, the front views of old airplanes and side views,
Uh-huh.
and I really got into that, and making model airplanes.
What year are we talking about, more or less? Grammar school.
Like third year, fourth year grammar school.
So
I wasn't very old when I started doing all that.
No, but I mean, when were you born? What was your year of birth?
1932.
32.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 36, 37, pre-World
No,
War
in the
II.
40s. In the 40s.
In the 40s,
Yeah.
okay. Good. And
I can remember Pearl Harbor and all that stuff.
you can?
Yeah,
Yeah, of course. Well, you should be able to.
it was quite a day. We heard it on the radio, and we went running around telling the neighbors nobody would believe us.
Yeah.
And little kids, what are you talking about?
That's like all the rest of us. I know the next day I was in junior high school and we came into our auditorium and the red curtain was all drawn shut. And sitting right in the middle of the stage was this little Philco radio with the arches and stuff on the front of it. Turned up full volume and FDR came on and gave his great speech, you know, the first thing. Those were big, important. You said you were drawing planes. I wonder if that had some connection to the...
Well, I remember one of the big things, God, it just turned me on so much. They exhibited a Zero airplane in Glendale.
Uh-huh.
And I just thought that was the greatest thing. And then there's an airplane that they were ferrying. We used to hear them because they'd ferry a little bit earlier than that. They'd ferry those planes over, the two-motor, I can't remember what the...
Our plane.
Douglas.
Douglas, yeah.
Yeah, and they'd ferry them. They were ferrying them to England. You know, they'd fly east and then they'd fly them over. And they were, very early on, they installed spotlights over in Highland Park up on the hill.
Yeah.
And then I'd lay there and look up the sky and hear them, you know, they'd go over in threes. And the lights would come on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
Scary
you really
stuff.
kind of felt that you were a part of the war or
That's
something.
right.
And then a fighter crashed into these houses about 4 blocks from
Wow.
my house.
Wow.
They just wiped these houses out. And I went over there, and it was a big thrill. You know, you smell all that gasoline, and there's little pieces of aluminum everywhere. We collected it.
Uh-huh.
Some of my ghoulish friends said, "Oh yeah, we saw the pilot all the way." You know?
That's it. So, but anyway, you were drawing even then. You said.
Oh yeah, I was doing all kinds of stuff.
And when you went off to the better elementary school, you said that you were off and running. What do you mean by that?
Well, I got to do all these big projects. I did a big, with temper paint, got to do a big, sort of stained glass window.
Wow. Okay.
And then I had a teacher who loved to have us jump around to music, and she was all into Picasso and all this stuff, and I was drawing trees. And then she didn't give me a good grade in art because I wouldn't do all this goofy contemporary stuff.
That's interesting. Okay. That's the reverse of most teachers in those days. You do goofy stuff and they hit you over the
But
head.
it's kind of stuck with me for until I got later in high school.
But in classes of that kind, but when you're in high school, when you were given a chance to have an elective, did you take art as an elective in school or not?
Yeah, I took a lot of drafting courses.
Okay.
And I took architectural courses, and then I started doing stuff in the teacher kind of. And then I did a lot of drawing. He gave me books and stuff that I made drawings from, the classical style pencil rendering of trees and rocks and stuff you see in those kind of magazines. I did some of those things.
But you had apparently your teachers at that time were giving you support. You were obviously getting support.
Yeah, I was mostly in drafting and rendering classes.
Were you thinking of being an architect at all? Was that on your mind or not?
Yeah, that was the main thing.
To be an architect, okay?
Yeah, I entered. My teacher thought it was really strange. I did this. I called it a desert shelter. I still have the plan. And I remember I rendered very carefully of this girl sitting in one of those old canvas chairs, a thing like that. And I left 2 legs off, so she was just balanced. And that was down in part of the garden.
Right, okay.
And I won 2nd prize in California. That's why they let me into USC.
Okay, now, 2nd prize of what?
Architecture, planning homes.
Architecture planning at the
Yeah.
high school level? Scholastic, probably. In one of the scholastic competitions that they used to call that, if I remember correctly.
No, it was an architectural
Oh, it's an
contest.
architectural, wow,
Yeah,
wow.
for high school students.
Okay, good.
And I got 2nd.
Coke was mine. Okay.
That's why they let me in USC.
Okay. All right, so you won
I
2nd
won
prize.
I won a book. It was Time, Space, and Architecture.
Okay.
I think I remember Walter telling me that you did some project that you got in trouble for, and he had to...
Well, that was later when we were seniors. And my sister met this girl called Vicki Dahlstrom, and her father's name was Grant Dahlstrom.
Yeah. Okay.
And he owned a small press in Pasadena.
That's right.
Cool little press.
A letterpress.
And then one of her relatives lives right across the street from the high school there. And they had some contemporary, not paintings, but ceramic, kind of cubist ceramic things on the wall. And she had books. And so my sister is really the first one to show me lots of cubism. So I loved the cubism right off the bat.
Well, give a little more detail to that. That strikes me as quite unusual that a sister living in Eagle Rock, California, even though she was older than you, was conscious of cubism and was teaching you about
She wasn't that much older. She was still in high school when I was in junior,
Okay.
like a junior. And
But even in high school, she was conscious of Picasso and things like that, you're telling me.
yeah, she showed us books. And then I got Time, Space, what was that? Moholy-Nagy book.
Yeah.
When I was about in 11th grade. And then Walter took that class where he went to the Ahrensbergs and all that stuff. I didn't actually go myself, but he came running back and was really excited.
But you were close enough friends then that he would report to you and tell you what
Oh,
he
we
did?
were, yeah, just all the time.
Okay. So even though you'd gone to school another place and he'd gone to private school.
Oh,
you
we
kept
started getting, second year high school, third year we started getting pretty close. Because he only lived a few blocks, and there was a couple other guys, about 4 of us, and we hung out at his house. He had a big, both of his parents were doctors.
Right.
And he had, in the back lot, he had another lot in the back, and they had a big swimming pool. And they had a pool table inside, and so we hung out there a
So that was
lot.
an entertainment area, yeah.
Yeah, we hung out there a lot.
That's funny. I've never heard Walter talk about that, about his house or family. I mean, I knew they were doctors, but that's all I knew, as a matter of fact. And in that, you were friends. Walter was not an art maker. He got involved in photography, I know, a little later on. Were there other students or were there other people in your area that were as interested as you were?
They were interested in music. We were interested in jazz.
Yeah, okay.
Because we joined a key club just so we could go to San Francisco.
Okay.
And because Walter listened late, and sometimes I would Line for Lions, Lion.
Yeah.
He had a program up there, and we were listening to Dave Brubeck and stuff.
Yeah.
And Walter more than I, but then we joined because it was Dave Brubeck's first date in Oakland, the Burma Lounge.
Wow, okay.
And Walter figured out how we would get in. We'd wear top coats. So we went up and stayed at I don't think we flew up or took a bus up or something, with the Key Club.
Yeah.
And they were all into all these meetings and point of order and all that stuff.
Right.
So Walter and I went to San Francisco and bought crabs and brought them back for the rest of the guys. I remember chowing down on crab. And then we went to Burma Lounge. And then, of course, Walter was the kind of person, he just walked up and introduced himself. And pretty soon we were sitting at the table with Tal Shader and,
Great.
Dave Brubeck.
Right. Now what, I don't know how you even answer that, but I do know that jazz played a more important part than the visual arts at that moment in your lives, apparently, from what I gather from Walter.
Well, we had this idea that formed later on of this thing called Concert Hall Workshop, which is going to be something that combined all this stuff, sort of a Moholy-Nagy kind of idea. And I actually drew a plan for one of these places.
I mean,
That was in that grew. They, you know, well, later on when he and Jim Newman did jazz concerts, you know, because
Now, Jim Newman, we know him obviously as running the Lexi Gallery, but at that time, was he in the gallery business or not?
no. This was like Walter met Jim just at Stanford when they started Stanford, and they were both worked on the Stanford Chaparral, and they made such a dirty issue they both got kicked out of school.
Is that what it was? So Walter, I know, went to school at Stanford in medical. He was going to be a doctor. His family wanted him to be a doctor.
And then Jim went to Oberlin,
Oberlin.
and that's mainly a music school.
Okay.
And he later had an orchestra.
Yeah, but it was in Stanford where they met, and then you met Jim through Walter.
I can't remember where Walter came in contact with Jim. Maybe still while we were still in high school, but I'm not sure.
I get the feeling it was fairly early, but I know.
Yeah, because Walter did all this championing, you know. I did all this cubist. I made a couple of cubist paintings. I think between my,
Do they still exist?
yeah, I got one.
Good for you.
But what was the project that
Well, the project was I designed everything in high school. At a certain point, I designed all these, you know, plaques and the senior plaque that goes in the ground,
That's right.
and then the program for graduation.
Okay.
We were Cavaliers, I think, and I designed a Cubist Cavalier. It was pretty like early Cubism, mostly lines and
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay. Good.
And that was supposed to go on and everybody, there was kind of a real strong reaction. They thought this was communist stuff, you know. And Walter, you know, took the principal books and showed him all this stuff and really championed the thing. And still the students were stepping on my heels in the hallway and stuff. They didn't dig it. And then I designed a patch. I got letters in lots of sports, in swimming and basketball and gym and tennis. But I don't know, it was some sports club, I can't remember the name of it. They were the Eagles, you know, and I designed an eagle, and they had it made out of, you know, Chanel.
Yeah, right.
And then a lot of people said, that looks more like a parrot than an eagle, and so they hated me.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they hated me. But Walter and I were, you know, we were kind of in the sports, and then we were also in the honor club, you know, because we were starting to get good grades. Walter particularly, because he later on got the first prize, Bank of America award. And it was funny at graduation because everybody were hating us, so to speak. And then they had they had to pass out the awards, and we started getting all these awards, and it really made everybody kind of mad.
When you were talking about his going on to Stanford and meeting Jim Newman and what have you, and you were talking also about the fact that they got kicked out. Do you remember why they got kicked out?
The issue of chaparral.
It was just.
I don't know what they did in there, but it was considered real vulgar, and so they got that's the version I heard. I mean, that's what.
Well, I'm sure that's a fairly true version.
And Chaparral was the humor magazine?
Yeah, college humor magazine.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, we probably read about it and didn't know it, but that's.
And then I went off to USC.
Yeah.
And I lived at home for a while, and then I went and stayed in a dormitory down there. But it drove me crazy because my roommate was a card player and drinker, and you weren't supposed to do any of those things, and smoked and kept me up all night.
And you were in architecture, or that?
I started in architecture.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And how far did you go in that area?
A year and a half.
Okay. And then?
Maybe a little longer. Can't remember. And you know, Frank was there.
Frank?
Gary. That's where I met him.
Okay. In those days, in architecture school. Okay. All right. So I didn't realize.
And then my friends,
Yeah.
the Grant Dahlstroms, they had a Lautner house built on that little lake as you go into Pasadena.
Yep.
With a round roof that comes out like that. Later on, I had a chance to buy that thing. I should have bought it.
Well, it would have been nice.
That's and then I did a thing on that. I took photographs, and I never met Lautner. I met Neutra and a few other.
Yeah, I met Neutra. Yeah. So,
And you took photographs of the Lautner house?
The house, yeah, and then I did a little write-up and stuff. It wasn't very good, but I did that for
For what? For the paper?
No, for my class at
History
UCLA.
class.
I did fine in architecture. I was going zipping along.
Oh, yeah, I would think so.
I-
You
and I
sound
was-
like you're really committed.
And I was, yeah, and I was ready, I took a summer course after the first year in printmaking. I made these prints, they're sort of like Paul Clayish.
Uh-huh.
And then I took a course at Pasadena College.
City College. Okay.
And I can't remember the teacher. And he was he's a guy who did sort of things where he scratched and did a lot of things. And
Yeah.
I wish I could remember his name right, I can't. And I did a bunch of paintings.
Uh-huh.
And then I got into the LA County Museum show.
The annual jury
Yeah, so
exhibition.
by that fall I was showing it at
Felix Landau.
Felix Landau Gallery.
Yeah, 50. Okay, by that fall. And then, so you were about, what, 24 by then? 23?
No, I was like 20.
20, okay, all right.
So you were still a college student.
Yeah.
It was second year.
Who was the architect? Who was on the architecture faculty at SC? Anybody,
Boy, it was all these, I can't remember.
anybody worth, but was it a modernist? Was it,
Well, the big influence was, that big company that did all the buildings in those days.
The glass and steel building.
Yeah, it was modern. It was
Yeah.
the emphasis. And there were some of the posted beam guys that were
Okay.
teaching there.
Yeah.
Buff.
Okay, okay, could be him.
And
The posted
Will and
beam-
Beckett were the big
Okay,
influences.
okay.
So you're
I
talking
mean,
about
it was a modern oriented school. It was a really good
so
school.
case study house related kind
Yeah,
of material.
right.
Okay, okay, got it.
And I loved all that stuff. We went around and looked at everything.
Yeah. There's a lot of good domestic architecture in Los Angeles. There's
Yeah,
no
we
question.
went around and just
Yeah.
searched it out.
Yeah.
And you were there at a great time.
Huh?
I mean, you were there right at the height of the case study project and some of the other things.
Yeah, they didn't like Herman Miller so much, but
That's interesting. Okay.
Soriano and all those
Yeah.
guys, we went and searched all that out.
And Eames? Eames was an important.
Oh, yeah,
thing,
yeah.
in those days.
I remember sneaking up down there on the property and
Oh, really? To looking
to
at the house?
To look at the house. I love that house.
It's a great house.
I still love that
It's
place.
a great house, I grant you, that's true. It's a wonderful house. But I was a little surprised to hear you talk about knowing Frank Gehry at that time. I always made Frank a little, not necessarily by years younger, but with another generation younger somehow. I don't know why.
No, he was actually a class ahead of me.
That's great. Okay, that's interesting.
But we were friends at school
Yeah, good.
and always have been
And
since.
always have been ever since that
That's
time.
right.
And he went on, and you now, we come to the crucial point. At some moment, you quit being an architect and started being something else. Okay?
Well, when I started getting in these exhibitions
Uh-huh.
and so forth, and it was funny because I went out to that was a big show in those days, the county
yeah,
county fair.
that was the
county
biggest
fair
show in town. Yeah, exactly right. That's right.
And I never got into the LA County, annual.
Uh-huh.
I applied, but
Okay.
I never got in.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, made me mad.
Well, which one are you talking about? You're talking about the one in,
Down in Pomona,
okay, all right.
where they have the
Fair.
cows.
The
and all
county
that
fair,
stuff, yeah.
the whole.
But that was a big show in
Oh,
those
yes,
days.
of course it was, yeah.
Yeah.
The LA County, LA County. All right,
Yeah.
let me define it. The LA County Fair, obviously, and then you said you applied to the annual juried exhibition
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
county museum and never got in. That's okay.
But
Because that was the nature
I
of
did send
conservatism.
watercolors to the San Francisco Museum, and I won a third prize
All right, good.
early on. Yeah.
And how would you define your painting at that time?
Kind of loose Paul Klee.
All right, but whimsical with
Yeah, and I did.
semi-figurative?
I would put it on the floor and put newspapers on the top and run around on it and
Okay.
pull it off and then scratch. And
Was it also the small scale of the clay, or were you painting? Were you
yeah,
bigger?
some of them, a couple of oil. There's an oil painting that's about this big called Ode to Crafts. I don't know where it is. It's kind of all red, and
Uh-huh.
it's got these kind of spacey looking space vehicles on there. Like,
Uh-huh. What, in just listening to you talk about your work and what you were doing, did you see that in the context of other artists' work, other galleries in town, anybody here particularly that, I mean, Walter's a friend, but he was not an art maker as such, so,
early on, what it came to the county museum
Uh-huh.
when I was still in school there,
Right.
or just after I left school. I think it was just after I switched to UCLA. The Art for Paris, the big abstract expressionist
Yep.
touring.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that came to the museum, and the first time I saw it, I hated it. Went back the next day. I think I went back almost every day.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And then I started making my versions, you know.
Of that.
I made a Pollock and a Hoffman, and
Yeah.
kind of went through it all, you know.
Well, I remember some of your earlier paintings, but that was, so you were with Felix, for how long were you with Felix?
Not very long, because I changed my style.
Uh-huh.
I did this big kind of like stick figure painting with black enamel with white and stuff.
Uh-huh.
He didn't like
And
those.
he didn't like that. Okay, but so, when and he said so, he just said, get out of here, what did he say?
No, he just, you know.
But then, all
By
right.
the time I sold some paint, I think I sold, 5 or 6 paintings.
Okay.
But I didn't get much money because he charged me for the frames, and they were expensive. That was the technique.
That cost. Okay, let's talk about
But it's
this.
pretty, just not to leave it, it's pretty amazing. I mean, 1953, Felix Landau's probably the best gallery in the city at that point. When you
One
go
of
show
It was
it.
even 51.
One of the three best.
Well, Pearls was in Beverly Hills in the gallery
Frank
that
Pearl and
showed.
Paul Cantor and
He
and Felix
showed.
were
He
three
showed
big
the.
German.
Yeah,
the
he showed
French.
all the hot shots.
That's
You
right.
know, Marcarelli and
That's right,
de
yeah.
Kooning and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Plus some European
Yeah,
stuff.
and the European thing.
Yeah.
But it was even earlier than that. It
But-
was 51, and you were 20 years old.
Yeah, that-
Yeah, I can't remember the Man Ray thing. That was before my time.
That was before you.
Yeah.
Now, what during the time that Walter, for example, was going to Aaronsburg and doing all these things, and actually met Duchamp and some other people, did he share all that stuff with you?
Oh,
Is
of
that-
course, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh, well, we were all excited.
Uh-huh. And
I mean, instead of, I don't know, between jazz and that stuff, I mean,
yeah, well, that's a lot of stuff.
we were really you were really buzzy.
Well,
I remember we were kind of interested in kind of I don't know, the kind of vulgar Man Ray style
Yeah.
thing. So there wasn't any of that stuff in magazines. So we went to these kind of like movie houses downtown, and the girls, I can't remember how much of their clothes took off in the movies. Not much,
Yeah.
maybe just the bras.
Yeah.
And Walter would sneak his camera in there and take
Yeah.
photographs.
Even that's pretty amazing. They take off their bras about it.
And yeah. And then he made collages of a lot of that stuff.
Oh, did he?
I don't know who God knows where they were.
Did you
Yeah, he made a lot of collage out of photographs and stuff.
Okay, because that's it's funny because you're putting that into context, because then you get into the whole thing of Bruce Conner and assemblage and collage and.
Yeah,
But that's
that was a
later
real
on,
interest of
right?
his.
Now there's a story that Walter was for a short time was in the service, and that you guys used to go up and talk to him through the fence.
That was a little later.
Uh-huh.
That was a little later. Walter switched to UCLA
Okay.
after they got kicked out, and he was in microbiology, I think.
Yeah, right.
And then Shirley was around.
Correct. Shirley
Yeah.
Shirley Nielsen.
Yeah. Who I met in high school.
Oh,
'Cause
that's
they were-
interesting.
Yeah, and Glow. I met him in high school because they were their fathers were doctors, and they were friends of Walter's parents. And they used to come down and go swimming in the swimming pool. And I think I grabbed Shirley one time, and
Yeah.
I don't think she's ever liked me since.
Well, that's
She was outraged.
Well, that's interesting because I know they lived in Petaluma. That's what.
Yeah, they used to
right,
come
they
down.
used to
They were
come
the
down.
families were really close.
And they were close to the Hopsons.
Yeah,
So that's how Walter and Shirley got together.
yeah.
It's amazing.
They were childhood friends.
Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
Really? You
I
didn't?
didn't know that.
Oh.
As well as I knew them both. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I knew they got married at Watts Towers. That's all I knew. But
I wasn't at the Met wedding.
Walter was not always forthcoming with information, and he wanted it secret. He wanted it all hidden. So, all right. So anyway, at a given moment, you were going up to San Francisco on a regular basis,
Oh,
And,
yeah, we used to go up there a lot.
and then you got involved in doing this thing called Sindel Studio, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that was sort of a continuation of this idea of a concert hall workshop.
Uh-huh.
And we got this building out on just off of Sandvin City, sending from this real character guy named Briar Shore.
Right in Brentwood, yeah.
And he got all these doors when they redid the Bel Air Beach Club, he got all these doors off the, where you change your clothes and stuff, regular doors.
Right.
And then he got all these old creosote-coated telephone poles.
Pier pilings, yeah.
And pier pilings, and he built this building out of these things.
Yeah.
And then he did a strange floor. He put kind of like thick padding under the floor, and they put linoleum over the floor. But if you put a point or anything on there, like I think there was a piano in there one time, and it made, just sunk into the floor.
And what was his idea?
And then the doors, the bathroom in there was all made out of doors.
Oh, yeah. But
And then there was a whole pile of toilets in the backyard that he was going to use someday. I mean, neighbors complained about it, but he liked art, and Walter got along with them.
what was his purpose of building the building? He rented it to you guys.
He rented. There was 2 stores, and I can't remember what was on the other side.
Okay.
And then he rented it to us, and that was going to be a gallery, and then it was a storehouse for a while. And then my friend Ben Bartosh and his wife lived in back for a while. And I think some other people used it as a studio for a while.
Okay. Now,
But we had a whole bunch of,
Okay.
collected a whole bunch of San Francisco painting.
But whose idea was it to start a gallery, to actually have a
I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
But then out of there, we organized the merry-go-round show.
Yeah, well, this
That
is
was-
what
yeah.
I'm going to get to. Yeah. What? And you were showing mainly at Sindel Studio San Francisco painters, even more than LA painters, right?
Yeah, but there was Gil Henderson,
Yeah.
and I remember he was in the LA annual, and he
Yeah.
did that painting that was I liked it, sort of like a Clifford still, but it was all thick white,
right.
and it was called Atavistic Image.
Yeah,
I always
that's
remember. I think they think if they bought it.
Yeah, that's right. It's there. Yeah, one of the few of that period of time.
And I try to remember there was a guy named Jack Lowe. I think he was kind of like a Sunday painter, but he was pretty good. He
Okay.
made some things, images, and then he kind of canceled them out with bright colors.
Uh-huh.
They were in the merry-go-round show.
All right.
Like I think there were 3 people from Los Angeles.
Okay. Well,
The rest were all San
Okay,
Francisco.
wait before we get to merry-go-round show. You have Sindel Studio, and there are all kinds of stories about how it got named. Do you remember the historical facts about that?
Well, the story was that Jim and Walter were driving on some back road in Ohio, I believe, and they hit a chicken farmer.
Yeah.
His name was Sindel. And his wife came running down, according to Walt, and said, "Gee, he's always in the street." And they didn't do much.
They killed him, but she wasn't too concerned, I guess, right?
That was what I.
But the name Sindel, so they named it Sindel
Yeah,
Studio after.
yeah.
And so that is a truism. That's an answer.
That's what I heard at the time, and I've always remembered that.
Okay.
I hope that's a real
Well,
story.
it's supposed to
Jim,
be.
knowing Jim, I would say, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Knowing Walt, maybe not if it was Walter's story, I don't know.
Yeah, but Jim said it. Okay, that's fine. So, all right. And now, when you had Sindel Studio, did you have Sindel when you did the merry-go-round show? Is it at?
I think so. I think that's where we organized this stuff.
Okay. All right. Okay. And what was the idea behind the merry-go-round show?
Well, we were doing another armory show only on a merry-go-round.
This is what was floating in your head?
Yeah, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Walter said. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Who would you been, as you're going back and forth to San Francisco, who up there was really exciting you in terms of painters?
Well, the whole list. All the people at 9 Mission Street. Yeah,
Jay DeFeo,
Yeah,
Sonny Jetkoff,
Jay and all those people. Jim Kelly.
Jim
and,
Kelly, yeah, exactly.
And Julius Wasserstein.
Yeah.
Then we went over to, Oakland where Diebenkorn was, and Paul Wohner, and the list,
But it was, yeah.
But Walter could get in anywhere.
Could what?
Go in anywhere.
That's right.
He had this approach to people. At first they wouldn't take him seriously because he was so young, and then he just had this thing about it. Right? He could talk his way into anywhere.
Yes, I think so. Or out, for that matter, yes.
He was very influenced by the readings of Moholy-Nagy because he was a real mover in the Chicago movement,
Correct.
and he wrote about how you should, get around people and stuff. And I don't know who else Walter learned all that from.
Well, that's interesting, yeah. That's interesting right there.
But he was a real pro at it.
Yeah. No, he was very good, there's no question about that. He had charm when he wanted it, and
Yeah.
it was good. And he could con anybody.
And he had his own kind of agenda. That was Walter. I could never figure out what that was, but he did.
Well, I don't think any of us could, but he did have a great capacity to convince people. I know that,
Yeah, all his
half
artists
dozen
were
of us would-
quite a bit older,
yeah.
and they all took him seriously and gave us art
Uh-huh.
to haul down a trailer on the back of a car.
Now, there's a story that when you came back down, you had an accident on the way down or something. What's that story?
Oh, it's a funny story. Yeah, we were driving on a back street in the valley with a trailer behind
Yeah.
Walter's old car,
Uh-huh.
and I'm trying to remember who I was with. Somebody that Walter picked up various guys along the way that would help us. They didn't have any, they weren't artists or anything, but they were kind of interested
Helpers.
in the arts, and they were a helper. And I wish I could remember his name. He was the first vegetarian I ever met. And I used to think
Pretty
it was really
amazing.
weird that he would eat nuts and fruit for lunch. But anyway, he was a cool guy. I'm trying to think I might think of, anyway, the trailer came loose
Mhm.
off the back of the car, jumped over and just went down people's lawns, like plowed all these lawns. And we just, saw all these paintings in the back, and we just jumped off and re-hooked it up. We had a pretty cavalier attitude about all this stuff.
But this was bringing things down from San Francisco.
Yeah, and I think at that point we were picking up, Gil Henderson.
Okay, yeah, okay, well, that's in the valley, that makes sense, yeah. It's interesting, I had thought of Gil Henderson for years, but actually there's a gallery, a very conservative gallery here in town that shows his work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I can't remember it right now, but I'll tell you about it later.
I know, I saw him in New York. He moved to New York for a while.
Right.
And I saw him in Max's, and he was making some kind of automated thing. It was like a music machine or something.
Well, he was one of the first abstract painters here, that's for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, that's true.
What, now, you talked about the merry-go-round show, and the merry-go-round show was the show, and you just said it, as a matter of fact, to be kind of an armory show about the West Coast.
Yeah, it was
all
called
California.
Action.
action.
Our idea was we liked this action,
Yeah.
Lots of brush strokes
And mainly abstraction,
yeah, all abstract.
all abstraction, okay. And how long did it go on?
It was only on a week or something like that. We had a big opening though,
Uh-huh.
and I designed a poster for it. That poster's reproduced in the catalog about the Paris show.
Right, and a lot of, you said you had a big opening, a lot of people showed up?
Yeah.
Serious interest?
Well, I don't know. There was a lot of the local artists showed up, and
Uh-huh.
I think Allen Ginsberg showed up. I think,
Uh-huh.
and
The
It was a
beginning
big
of, well, kind of
opening.
the beginning of the Beat Generation.
we had a music playing and stuff,
Yeah.
and it was quite hard to get together.
Yeah,
I mean, because Walter was in the army, and we'd
Uh-huh.
go up and
so that's when he was in the service and then.
during that time, and he came down for the opening.
Okay. Uh-huh. So actually, if he was in the army, you did a lot of the organizing, obviously, and installation and things like that.
and we got some other people to
Mhm.
help us. Ben Bartosh and his wife, and I'm trying to remember who else. And I was married at the time to a girl named Phyllis
Uh-huh.
McGarry,
That's right. Uh-huh.
and she helped.
Yeah.
And we got some other people. I remember we wanted to look so much like the Armory show that we went out and got these big ice cream cartons. Those big ones. And
Uh-huh.
filled them with sand and got palm fronds and stuck them in there. And they were sort of. And then we put canvas over the merry-go-round, so you couldn't see the horses.
You
So
couldn't
we
see
just
the
hung
horses.
paintings on there. And I remember we hung a big J DeFeo with a hole in it, so
Uh-huh.
you could see through it on one of the posts.
All right. That was very inviting. Now, you can answer a question that I've never had correctly answered. Did you do a second action show?
No, I don't. That I know.
Okay. Because they always talk about action 1, action 2, and Walter always
Well,
talked
he
about
might have done that at Keenholz. I don't know. At the Now Gallery. I don't know.
Well, I don't think at the Now Gallery, was that, do you
It
know?
was done at the Coronet Theater.
Oh, it was.
No.
Well, see, as soon as I got my master's degree, I went off to Europe and New York,
Right.
and that was in '56. And I went to New York and immediately went to the Cedar Bar and
Right.
met all those guys.
All the guys.
Yeah,
Okay. In '56, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, great, okay.
yeah.
And you went to Europe, you're one of the few people of that moment
Went
in
to
time. that
Europe
were-
and sort of hung out with Joan Mitchell
Yeah.
and Mike Holtberg and I met San Francis, and he didn't pay much attention to me, but and I barged in on Matthew
Oh, very good on
one
it.
time, and he was like a count or something, I don't know. He sort of barged in. He
What's
didn't
it?
have much time for me,
But you were about the only person from this area who went to Europe at that time, went to Paris. And I know that one of the apocryphal stories of you is you brought back information that was very valuable to the artists of the area. Can you recount a little bit about that?
Well, it was, like my experiences in New York, met all. I was going to stay in New York.
And you didn't because?
Well, I went to New York, and then I went up to Provincetown,
Uh-huh.
and I did meet Hoffman, but a lot of artists were up there in the summer.
Yeah, right.
And then I went back then I met a girl who later, Judy Newman, who later on married Jim Newman.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
And then I went over to Harvard with her, and she was in Harvard summer school. And then I went off to Europe, and I was there about 6 months or something like that.
What did you see when you were over there?
I toured all over the place. I went to Italy, and I went to Spain, and I went to Scandinavia,
Okay.
and I hung out in Paris at the La Coupole and the Dome and all that stuff.
Now are you by yourself?
Yeah,
Okay, good for you.
and then I went back through New York and met Judy again, and and then this guy was going to sell this small loft. It wasn't like a loft; it was like a really old studio with a high ceiling. Actually, had a skylight and had a little bedroom and a bathroom. And I scrounged up enough money for the key money, $300. I asked my parents, and they sent it to me. And then he changed his mind. He gave it to somebody else, and I got discouraged. And then I also was asked to share this big loft down in Soho with a guy, and it was one of those giant ones, just with a creepy floor,
Yeah, right, exactly.
And there was a heat only on the weekdays, and he had a Sears metal shower, and it was dark and dreary, and the metal ceiling that was all peeling, and I spent a couple of nights there, and I said, I don't think I can
Do that.
I don't think I can do it. So I went back to California.
What, and when you came, you were saying that was 1956,
So,
right?
yeah.
Okay, so when
Into
you,
57, then I moved to San Francisco for a very short period of time.
okay,
And that's when I first painted those first 3 very white paintings with the little sparse
Studio.
things that
studio?
that I later showed
Yeah.
at Ferus.
Okay,
And I remember one of the big ones that I've rediscovered where it is now, that's in the little brochure that we printed on Sawtell, on Wally's Press.
okay.
I
Wally-
lost it
Wally
for a
Burman's
long,
Press on Sawtell,
Stone
which is,
Brothers.
yeah, exactly right, okay.
and so I lost. I painted these 3 paintings, and I was so nuts. God, I remember my mother came up with a TV, and I wouldn't have anything to do with the TV. So I remember throwing it or something. But I had a cool little place on California Street, one of those old Victoria places, Victorian places. But they had high ceilings, and it was nice. And I probably should have stayed there. But I remember Jim lived down the street with this ex-Marine guy, and we'd hike over to North Beach and go to the jazz and poetry places and stuff.
Now, was that where you met Vivian?
That was later.
Later.
When I went up there a second time.
Okay.
But then Walter and met Ed,
Okay.
and
Keyhole.
and then they were going to open the Ferus Gallery. So I thought, yeah, I think this sounds good, because there wasn't much opportunity for me to show in San Francisco.
Were you painting when you were in Europe?
I made some things, but I don't remember exactly
But I know you did but I remember you did studio when you came back. And then you did one, something, it had a French title, but it had something to do with white eyes or something like that it was called. The Girl with White Eyes, does that ring a bell to you?
I painted some paintings of girls in college. And they were real white and.
This is pure abstraction.
No, these are.
I mean, the one you're talking about.
Yeah, then there's one really early painting, and I don't know whatever happened to it. I did in college that was sort of similar to what I did later.
Okay.
And Ed Kenold's got those off of me, and they're up in Idaho now.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah.
Still there as part of that thing?
Yeah, they're in the German wing over there.
Okay, yes, okay. Yeah, I got it. Okay.
But when I was up there and I did a show there at his little museum.
Gallery, right.
Yeah. He called it a
Hope
museum.
Hope Museum.
I saw them again. And I think
Oh, that's interesting, all right.
And then, so I did these 3 paintings in San Francisco at this place, and I just really got in. It was kind of a sad time, but I really reacted against all that thick Bay Area painting.
Yeah.
I went to a big annual there, and it
Yeah.
was one canvas after another like that
The
stuff.
same thing.
And I just said, I don't like this. So, and then I painted this one pretty large one, I think it's over 6 feet of all these little lines and filled in. And then I didn't know what to do about it. And it had a kind of a leg, one leg, it looked a little bit like a still life. And then I took it off the stretcher, and then I was gonna store my stuff. I think I put it in some kind of storage. And so I just threw it in the trash in the back of the storage place. And Walter said, I think we better get that. So he scrounged it out of the trash.
Okay. Yeah, well, he was a good scrounger too, that's true.
And that was later the only painting I ever sold out of the old Ferus.
Oh, that's well, that's okay. So we are at a moment now where Ed Kingles and Walter have gotten together. They have moved to the Coronet Theater and the Now Gallery, which was Ed's gallery.
I never saw that gallery. I was in San Francisco.
Well, Coronet Theater,
or Europe at that time.
Coronet Theater was mainly, it was lobby. It was like a lobby show, pretty much.
No, I remember going to films there.
Sure,
Yeah.
exactly. And but the Now Gallery was a space more like the first Ferus, which was on that side of the street. I guess you'd say the east side of the street. But when Ferus opened, were you part of the first showings there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The official Ferus, 735
Yeah,
North
yeah.
Lansing again. Okay.
I didn't do a lot of work, but I sort of helped them build it.
You mean physically? You made
Yeah, they put plywood on the walls, kind of nailed it up. And the guy in front with the early American antiques, he was a sweet guy. He
Okay.
really helped out and everything.
Oh wait, are you talking about the one in its final location or the
No,
first,
the early.
the first location?
Yeah, it was in back of
Over by Streeter Blair's place.
Which one? Yeah.
It was Streeter Blair, yeah.
Yeah, Streeter Blair.
That was his antique store in the front.
Who did the Grandma Moses-like painting?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
you know. And then I can remember some of the guys then nailing up the plywood and all this stuff.
I mean, although I know that was pretty.
That first show was pretty good. It had a Clifford Still and all this stuff.
That was compared to the new Ferus or the final Ferus, that was pretty shoddy workmanship. But you were used to pier piling, so that's a different thing.
Well, we painted the plywood white.
Yeah, true.
And Ed worked in the back.
Yeah.
He did, he worked, that's where his studio was, in the back of the gallery.
Well, actually, one of the things it's interesting because one of the things that Ferus has become somewhat known for is the fact that it was very pure, very clean, very white, and I forget the Frank Pearl's gallery was designed by a guy named Lustig. Do you remember him as a designer?
Yeah.
Okay, and I know Walter always thought that was a basis for Ferus, but most galleries at that time still had what do they used to call that stuff? Ragweed on the walls,
Monk cloth.
yeah, monk cloth, like monk cloth on the wall, and everything was hung 2 inches from each other.
Yeah.
So Ferus impacted the way things looked, that's for sure. What did you know all those guys? Did you know Ed Moses? Did you know Irwin? Did you know Bankston before you were affiliated with the gallery? Was that?
I knew the UCLA guys,
Okay.
and Les Carr and,
Yeah.
and Ed Moses. forth. And then there was another group, you know, John L. Toon and Billy Al, and then they knew Irwin. Irwin never showed at the Old Ferris.
Right.
And we kind of came together, you know. We were the university guys and they were the art school guys.
Yeah, I got it.
And at first we kind of, and then we were really friends, real fast.
Yeah. It's what.
And I don't think Keynotes, I don't know whether, did he go to art school in Hope in Idaho or something? I don't know.
I don't think he ever went to art school.
Yeah. He went to
Either.
trade school.
Well,
He liked to trade.
Yeah, he was a baling wire kid. He was brought up to fix and build things out of baling wire from the time he was little. So that was, but amazing. That's an amazing thing. But I don't know how he got that interest in art. But he was never really in art school. But he did have some sophisticated taste in the fact that he was conscious of and aware of people like Mark Tobey and people like that in the upper Northwest where he grew up, you know, in that way. So
He was quite a scholar of all the art in that area.
yeah,
Bought some things.
Yeah. No, he was
But he made all those,
an idiot.
Made a lot of
right, I guess. Right.
a lot of those paintings. I can remember him working on that, what's called George Washington.
Yeah, George Washington.
I
and
can
Drag.
remember him nailing that together.
That's right.
But when I first, I remember I sold that painting, and I remember it was $300, and of course John Altoon immediately grabbed me and said, "We're going to go down to Santa Monica Canyon to Chuck's Steakhouse. So you got to buy me dinner."
Okay.
So Ed took the 150, or I think he took third in those days.
Yeah,
I think he done.
probably.
So we went down there, and I'll never forget. John was one of the people were really put off at first, and then John would start talking.
They'd love him. Yeah.
So we were sitting at this table, and we were ordered a bottle of wine and some steaks, and we were getting all in. And he started, you know, and these people took offense. There was a couple of guys and some women at the other table, and he came up, "What are you blah, blah, blah?" And then John said, "Oh," and so pretty soon he started talking to them. We were invited over to the table. They were buying wine, and pretty soon we were invited on a cruise to Bob.
That's right.
That's an example of the kind of charm.
No, he was amazing. He's amazing. I'm trying to think of the name of that steakhouse in Santa Monica Canyon.
Chuck's.
Is it Chuck's? Is it?
Yeah, I think in those days it was Chuck.
Well, maybe in those days it was Chuck, but it was there for a long time.
Yeah.
We all ate there. It was the cheapest steakhouse in the city. You're talking about John Altoon and others. Give us just a few insights into the people, the artists around that time. Your kind of insights in relation to how you felt about Billy Al's work or Irwin's work or things of that kind.
Well, they all changed very quickly. You
From
know.
abstract expressionists into whatever they became. That's true.
Yeah, and we were really all very close because we all met up at Barney's, you know.
Right.
And it even became more so later. At first, we didn't meet with Barney so much. We went to an outdoor restaurant right next to where the Ferris was going to move,
Okay.
and we'd go over there sometimes for drinks and stuff.
So,
But the openings at the old Ferris, were incredible.
yeah, right. Well, even at the new Ferris, as far as that's concerned.
There's some great shots, I think, of an opening of yours that Patty Ford took.
Yeah.
That looks.
Well, we printed a little brochure, and there was a little review in there by Jules Langsner, and he was a nice guy.
Jules was
He was one of the few people that were sharp in those days,
and
invented the term hard edge painting.
Right, he did.
And then, so he did that, and we printed it up down at the little press, Wally's Press, and Walter, I remember he would put things in there, and then I'd say, "Walter, you're going to get your hand crushed," and he'd speed it up. That was his thing. It was kind of like this Zen thing, getting him in.
That's great.
Anyway, so then we had a party at Joe Bear's house. She was married to a lawyer at that time, and they had an apartment in Beverly Hills.
Yeah.
And we had a big party, and then we went over there, and Ed had gone over earlier, and my mom had showed up. And
Surprise.
remember that you went down a, kind of like, not an alley, but it was like an entrance. There was an old fence on one side, and John Mason put a big thing up on the wall, and then it was sort of blocks, And my mother was very upset because there were weeds growing in there. And there was a gate at the front. And so Ed told me, he arrived there and the gate was open. And he was all kind of upset, and he went inside. This little lady was pulling weeds. And he said, "Who the hell are you?" You know, and she said, "I'm Craig's mom. This place is a mess."
But Billy Allen famously said that you were the first Southern California to really start making really good paintings that were not essentially copies of Northern California paintings.
Yeah, well, I just left a lot of canvas bare.
Yeah.
And they're white, and it was white, and it was a bit expressionistic. But when I scraped it with palette knife, but the colors were all kind of red, yellow, and
Red,
blue.
yellow,
You know,
green,
sort of
blue.
like, if Mondrian would have painted an abstract
Not a bad
expressionist painting. Yeah.
That's right.
But that impressed me, and that was a good. I must remember that was one of my best shows.
Well,
There was enough work, and it was very even, and the opening was really terrific. There were some great openings there.
Yeah. Well, I know that later, of course, the people used to always dress up when they came. Larry Bell and the rest of them would all show up in, not in drag, but in costume, you know. So, what led you to move from the kind of painting we're talking about, the kind of abstract purism paintings, expressionist paintings, into the utilization of plexiglass plastic?
Well, after that show, I don't remember how long, I went to San Francisco and I met Vivian.
Right.
And we moved back to San Francisco. I spent some time up there, and then I was second guessing myself. And I started painting thick paintings again.
Okay.
And there's a few that are okay. And I sort of retrogressed. And then we were up there, I don't remember how, and then a lot of the guys moved up there. Ed Moses spent some time up there, and I shared an apartment with Jim Newman.
Yeah.
We partially went up there because Jim opened the Delexi.
Right.
And so we were showing there. And that's where I met Bob Morris during that time. And then Vivian and I went off to Europe.
Right.
And we spent a long time there. I think it was like almost 2 years.
No.
And we went to Paris and shared a studio with Irving Petlin.
Right.
And
Irving was a classmate of
lived with
mine.
Irving.
Yeah.
And then downstairs, Bram van Velde,
Yep.
who I liked his paintings. And right down the street was the Hotel du Navire, where all the beat poets hung out. It was a good time there. And then we went to Spain to get away from all the stuff that was going on in North Africa,
Okay.
in Algeria. That was very depressing. We were there, and you hear at night, you hear a bomb go boom.
Ooh.
And then you walk past it,
Area.
an area, and they usually bomb restaurants. You've been in a little cafe, and it was just a big black hole. And then poor old Irving, he looks sort of
Irving
North
Petlin, you're talking
Yeah,
about.
so he got slammed a couple of times. And then they had tanks parked, and finally there was big demonstrations, and it was pretty depressing. And then one night, I'll never forget it, his gallery dealer was a Hotel du Dragon.
Okay.
No, what was that? No, what was it? Gallery du Dragon, that's what he showed. With Mata and all that stuff, because he was sort of a surrealist.
Yeah.
I mean, had leanings.
That way.
Yeah, and these guys were real leftists. And I remember they came rolling around in one of those big old Citroens. And that was the night the parachuters were going to come in. The were going to come in and invade Paris, and they were building barricades. And they wanted me to come with them.
Of course.
They had automatic weapons, and they were going to go out and fight the paratroopers. And I don't think so. I don't remember whether Irving went or not.
Irving was a real leftist. I know that. I was just saying, he was a classmate of mine in Chicago. He was 1 year behind me, but he was, even in those days, he was really
Well, then the American Air Force turned back the...
Pardon?
The American Air Force based in Spain turned back all the paratrooper planes.
That's right.
And then there were some big demonstrations, and that was the end of it.
Well,
And then Vivian and I went to Spain, and went to Ibiza, spent 3 or 4 months there. That was fun.
Great.
And then when we came back, we stopped in New York, and I went to Martha Jackson Gallery, and I saw a new little Bingston and a Ken Price that had been sprayed sort of metallic colors, and I said, where have I been? I've been treading water.
Okay, wait, one second, just to fill in Los Angeles, on Los Angeles, next door to the new Ferus Gallery, was another gallery called the Esther Robles Gallery. She showed mainly Northern California people, but she also had an affiliation with Martha Jackson Gallery in New York, and it was through Esther that Walter organized this exhibition that Craig was just talking about in New York.
Yeah, it wasn't,
Yeah.
there weren't too many pieces, there
No.
were just, yeah. And so I saw that and I said, these guys just took the bait and ran with it, you know?
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so, as soon as I got back here, I got a studio on, I think I was first on Los Angeles, or upstairs. And Ed Moses took pity on me.
Uh-huh.
At first I was treated as sort of an outsider because
Yeah.
I'd been gone too long, you know? And then Billy started being very friendly. And then, I don't know how I got onto this working on flat plastic. I don't remember exactly, but it was the colors. And,
On flat plastic,
and
okay.
we worked on the back, so it was easy to get a nice even coat of paint.
Yeah.
And then I did these big, strange things that I got off of, I don't know where exactly. I was influenced by Duchamp, you know, the early Duchamp paintings, especially, you know, Bride, Laid Bare, all that stuff. And paintings before, Sad Man, you know, Young Man on a Train. And,
Yeah, okay,
and all
reading
this
it,
stuff.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I've always loved those things. And then at first I drew them over old Frederick's catalog, pages in the
All
catalog,
right, that's interesting.
and which I've gone back and done some big blow-ups of some of that stuff. And then I started doing them on, at the first one I did in glass, and then glass didn't work, and then I did them on flat plastic, and then I started doing them big,
Okay.
and for getting frames made for them, and I did most of that. I spray painted
I don't think I've
them.
ever seen those at all.
The flat plastic,
Yeah, I don't
they're in the catalogs.
Yeah,
They're in the catalogs.
yeah. I mean,
They're still, I got 3 or 4, they're still in perfect shape.
Yeah, I just had never seen them. hanging on the wall.
They were in like a shadow box.
Yeah, no,
So
I
there
know
was a
them.
shadow
Yeah.
on the back. And then I was very conscious of people using plastic. I knew that Molinage had used it off and on in Tatlin.
Yeah.
No, not Tatlin, Pesner.
Pesner.
But on a small scale, you know.
Yeah.
And so I took out an ad in Art International. And just you know, like a copyright thing. I
Yeah,
had to
okay.
reproduce
Oh,
one
that's
piece.
interesting, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
What was
interesting.
the
Well, the ad was a reproduction of one of, and it said, you know, Kauffman paintings, you know, on plexiglass.
On plexiglass.
And, yeah,
And a copyright thing, they could
it was
protect
like,
you,
that, yeah.
protect you.
I don't know
from
why I
things.
did that, but I did it.
Well, that's smart, I guess, as a matter of fact.
And,
Yeah, but all of those, but when you're talking about the Gobbo and Pesner and what have you, those little pieces they made, they all turned yellow. That early plastic was horrible, but by this time it was
yeah,
pure.
for this time, it was okay. Although some of the plastic I used along the way wasn't so good.
Okay.
There's a lot of difference and different kinds of.
And when did you start filming it?
In like, I think 1963, I think.
63.
64.
Okay.
Because I'd seen signs, and then I remember I saw some, I think they worked for a plastic company, had made a little vacuum form thing of a still life, and then they painted it from the back, and as soon as I saw that, that was it.
That's it, okay. All right.
Just like that, I knew. Yeah, those are the flat.
Okay.
And those kind of shapes were the shapes I did over the
Yeah.
Fredericks of Hollywood pages.
Pages, okay.
And since then, I've blown some of those up, digital.
Yeah, okay. But those aren't flat plastic. Those are
Yeah, those are on flat plastic, the early ones. And that the thing out there at the side are shadows.
Let's just
Okay,
say,
all right.
if you don't mind holding it up for a second, we'll get it on.
Yeah.
So these are not, those are not three-dimensional forms.
No,
Those-
it's
Okay,
form.
but you did some shortly after that did have some three-dimensional aspects that had that kind of shape, right?
yeah, similar,
Yeah, okay, all right, that's what I'm thinking of.
like these.
There you go, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, exactly.
But they're more stylized and
Okay,
they're not so
got it, okay.
suggestive. The people call those hockey sticks.
Call
But
it
the, but the
Hockey
early,
sticks, sometimes they
but
call
the early
them.
ones, you were taking the shapes right from Fredericks of Hollywood.
No, I would just do them over, which I liked all that stuff.